Hey everyone, happy Tuesday. We're in the middle of a deep freeze right now in Edmonton and it's pretty cold. It's supposed to warm up to the low minus 20s today, and I think we're all a little excited for that. So, in today's video, I'm going to talk to you guys about our Edmonton real estate market stats if we're single family homes. So, if you're wondering as a family, hey, what can we afford to buy? Hey, we live in Edmonton. What is our home worth? We're looking to move up in our market. This video is going to be for you. I'm also going to address the most recent news that you've seen in the last few days about Trump and the tariffs. And I'm going to talk about the articles on the internet and talk to you from a professional point of view in terms of what is happening with our real estate market. Are we going to crash? And I am actually filming a video that is going to go onto our channel in the next probably week or two. You'll see that video come up where I will talk about it into even more extent. And feel free, if you're watching live, to ask any questions you may have, and I can try to answer whatever I can. So let's start off with how many listings we currently have. And you're going to see that we did take a little bit of a drop. So the last 2 weeks, we went a little bit higher, and then we kind of took a little bit of a drop. And why could that be? There is more sales happening. And so there's more sales happening than there is new listings coming on the market. And so it's eating into the market of listings that already existed. And so that's why the numbers dropped. In the surrounding areas, everything's pretty much the same. The only one that took a little bit of a nosedive was Spruce Grove, but I mean, everything else, nothing too crazy when it comes to that. It's a very low number. To have 1,291 active single family listings is extremely, extremely low in February. And it's going to be hard for the market to catch itself up because in order for us to kind of balance our market out, we've got to have more and more and more listings and a little less sales. But I don't think that's going to happen. Now, people are wondering, and I've already been asked the question, are the tariffs going to affect the number of sales? Is that going to make the market go down and maybe have less sales? Maybe less people are going to put up their house for sale because of the uncertainty. Stay tuned. I will talk about that in a second. Let's just look at the pending sales in this last week. So, in the last week, this is how many deals came into contract in terms of offers that buyers and sellers agreed to. In Edmonton, we had 164, so a little less, but nothing of like craziness in terms of 176 to 164. That's nothing like, oh my gosh, it just went from 176 to like 76. That would be scary, but week to week, no. Don't forget as well, there's monthly outlooks as well. We look every week on Tuesdays, but I'm going to be filming our monthly stats once the Edmonton Real Estate Board releases that. We will be filming that to talk about what happened for all of January. When we look at the micro of week to week, it's always good to kind of zoom out and take a look at the month. And then I did do a video of the whole year for 2024 just on the channel a few weeks ago. So take a look and see what does it look like in terms of that. What does that mean? For sold in the last 7 days, we saw 184 sales. So that's deals that firmed up from pending sales or deals that were unconditional. Now, I had a listing go up and in the $415,000 price range, and we were in multiple offers. And there was no unconditional offers, which means all of the offers had conditions, which means the offer we chose means that we were one of the pending numbers, not one of the sold. If we had an offer with no conditions, we would have been one of the sold and we would have skipped the pending number altogether. So something to consider that I think that in March, April, we're going to start to see more unconditional sales because of such low inventory. And you're saying, but Melody, you're talking about what's happening in the world, and isn't that going to impact things? Okay, there are other factors that will impact sales. Okay, there are interest rates that impact the sale, and also they can and cannot impact sale. There is the reality that when you buy a house, you're going to pay and you're going to have a mortgage with interest. For the most people will. The interest rate has gone up over the years, and then now recently it's starting to drop. Now, when it started going up, did we see an impact? Of course we did. But then we started to see people still come to buy a house because at the end of the day, they still need to make that change. They need to move for their job. Their house was too small. Life stuff was changing, and they had to move. So that build up that we've had, people waiting for rates to drop, has started to already infiltrate into the market even in the last year. And people are just done with waiting because they realize, oh, waiting a little longer for the rates to drop doesn't really help me because the prices have gone higher. So they waited, got a lower interest rate, but the prices are higher. So now their mortgage is higher anyways. Once that realization came, that came to be. So you got interest rates. Now, interest rates are affected by both the Bank of Canada and by the bond rates. It depends on if you're getting a fixed or variable mortgage. If you are getting a variable mortgage, the Bank of Canada rates are the ones that, when they make those announcements, that they get affected. So, for example, I just saw a news article that they're calling for an emergency Bank of Canada reaction to the tariffs to lower the interest rates by significantly more than 0.25, but potentially 0.5 or higher for lowering that. Now, that's going to impact your variable rates, not your fixed. Your fixed rates are affected by bond rates, which also the bond rates are also affected by the economy. So, yes, the tariffs do play a role. Now, I don't know if you noticed, but the tariffs are held off for 30 days for both Mexico and Canada for now. I can barely keep up, and I can barely keep up through sifting through all the social media noise about tariffs and fear tactic and what's happening here and let's do this and let's do that. If you know anything about me, I do not buy into fear tactics. I do not buy into emotions. I'm all about facts. And you have to wait and see about what's going to happen. We can't speculate as to what is going to happen. You should never buy a house based on speculation. You should only ever buy a house when it is the time for you to buy. So, for example, you've saved up your down payment, you're ready to go and enter in that market, or your family has been waiting to move from one city to the other, or your family has outgrown their home, or your family is downsizing because the kids have moved away for school. Never buy on the world is falling, the sky is falling, right? That's never been a good tactic. There's a lot of people that wanted to buy because they were speculating the prices in Edmonton are just going to keep going, and it's a great market to enter. A lot of people from Ontario and BC are now coming in from as an investor saying, hey, like if your market ever becomes like Toronto, this is going to be a great market to invest in. And just so you know, we're not Toronto. We never will be, and we never will be Vancouver. We will never be Calgary. So there is a big gap. Edmonton's typically followed Calgary's, but we got this huge $200,000 gap, and I don't see it closing at all. And we'll see what happens with average price. I'm going to check with my colleagues in a couple months to see what their first quarter did, what their average price was, and then we can check and see what Edmonton's first quarter prices are and see where we're at this year. Last year we were sitting at 200, and a lot of the price changes happen in the first quarter. A lot of the sales happen in the first quarter, so that's the best way for us to see that. Now, to go back to the tariffs question, is that going to affect us? Well, there's always a thing. Do you remember 5 years ago when I started doing this live update every single week? I did it because I wanted to give people certainty on what is happening because the news was reporting that the sky was falling. A lot of us, in fairness, had no idea what was going to happen, like zero. And I would say that we also are in the same position now. We also have no idea. There are people, I've watched some videos of people talking about the 1970s comparison to 2025, people speculating that, hey, there was an increase in inflation, decrease in inflation, and then it went back even higher. Oh no, we're going to do the same thing. At the end of the day, nobody has a crystal ball. No one knows what's going to happen, including Trump. Okay. There is a lot of divisiveness happening, and I'm not a fan of that. You got to be careful. I think we need to be kind, and we need to look at the facts of what is your specific situation. Does it make sense for you to move? If it doesn't, stay in your home. Don't buy. Does it make sense for you to move from renting to buying? That's up to you to decide if renting versus owning makes sense for you. Not everyone is ready to own because it's not just about the money and down payment. It's also about the responsibility, that mental load of carrying. I have to pay a mortgage every month. I have to pay property taxes. I have to pay utilities. Now, one could argue that you have that same load when you're renting versus owning, but there's a different type of load that gets a little heavier when you own the house. You're on the line if something happens with your home. You need to save money for the furnace if it stops working in the dead of winter and you need it, right? But if you're renting, you can pick up the phone and call your landlord. So there are different factors involved. Um, Now, let me take a look before we run into some articles. And if you're watching live, please feel free to comment anything and questions you have, because what I want to do is debunk media. And so I will pull up some articles. If you guys have some articles you want me to talk about, just put them in the comments and I'll talk about them here in just a minute. So, compared to last year at this time, Edmonton sales are identical. Like, if you were watching me last week and the weeks before, we were still lower in sales compared to last year at this time, which is interesting because the market feels a lot busier for us realtors than it did last year at this time. And I think it's because of the fact that we don't have as much inventory. We don't have as many homes to choose from for buyers, and so we have to move quicker in order to like actually get sales to happen, right? So you can see nothing too crazy. It's interesting because I think if we follow suit, I think we're going to start to surpass last year's numbers within a few weeks. That's my guess. St. Albert had less sales than last year at this time, and Sherwood Park did, and Spruce, but Edmonton has not. I still think Edmonton's going to start to supersede that. Don't forget Spruce, Stony, well, Sherwood Park, St. Albert, all those surrounding areas, smaller, right? So they're just not going to have as many homes for sale, period, because the house isn't, they don't have that many homes for sale. Now, if you are watching, let's take a look at some of what is happening in the market. So I'm going to share my screen with you and I'm going to Google just like you could, just like everyone else is. Tariffs, Edmonton housing market. One of the things I did see was someone talking about how Trump targeted Edmonton with the drug situation. And that definitely is something you're seeing being targeted. And I'm not saying that I know that the situation is what it is, because I'm not a police officer and I don't know the actual stats. Drugs is a huge problem everywhere, including here. I'm not going to neglect that. But is that going to affect our real estate market? I don't know, because if you take a look at all of the all the real estate markets across Canada, they all have drug problems. Every single one of them do. So if we take a look, people are wondering if houses are dropping in Edmonton. Here, this is Edmonton Journal talking about Edmonton's affordability allure eroding slightly. Oh, you guys can't see that. Tariffs would have a huge impact on housing market. So let's take a look at these two articles and dive into what they're saying. This article was written by the Edmonton Journal just on the 25th of January, which was before the tariffs got that whole thing happened this last weekend. So all things considered, total migration to Edmonton is going to be decent, but not as red hot as it has been, which honestly might be a relief to some people because the market is a little crazy. I see a comment about house pricing in Edmonton still rising. So far it is, but it's only February 4th. If you're looking for an immediate effect of the tariffs, you're not going to see that right away. People aren't going to just stop buying. And even if they did, it's not going to show up and reflect in the market instantaneously. Just kind of if the tariffs do happen, that effect isn't going to happen immediately. All of a sudden, everything's going to fall out. I don't know if you know this, but most Canadians are one paycheck away from bankruptcy. So as much as everyone wants to support Canada and Canadian local products, if it's not affordable anymore on both sides, if American pricing is still higher than Canadian, obviously they're going to go to Canadian anyways. So tariffs are going to drive prices up, but at the end of the day, Edmonton, the American pricing still may be cheaper because they have started lower, and that's going to be a part of that piece. If you're looking to buy a house and you have all your numbers worked out and now you're going to be buying local, now you have to budget for more money. So that's why I'm saying it's going to take some time to see if people will really follow through with all these threats and claims that they're making. And then we'll see, right? We'll see. So this one says, mass migration to Edmonton over the past few years has been a main driver boosting the economy, but resulting demand has slightly eroded in the housing market. So this is the latest report from Conference Board of Canada. I don't even know who that is. And I'll tell you this. Yes, there are people coming from Ontario and BC. You're watching me probably from those provinces. But there are other people that are buying in Alberta. There are interprovincial migration, which is people moving from Calgary to Edmonton is actually quite common. So that's not going to affect the mass migration. I mean, it is because it's moving that direction, but you're not talking about interprovincial. You're also just having movement within. So you have to remember there's been people, like I said earlier, moving because they have to move anyways. And now our population is larger. Of course, you're going to see more movement. When it says slightly eroded, that's also like, um, what's the word? People just have there's no numerical value to that. They're just giving you this generic slightly. Um, Let me just see here. Do you think the tariffs will drive resale prices up as well? So, like I just said, if you weren't watching earlier, the resale prices are going to be driven higher by demand of homes. So, how many buyers are coming to buy and how many listings are available to buy. If the tariffs affect people to not put their houses up for sale. So, for example, in the pandemic, there was a lot of people that were not putting their houses up for sale, obviously, because they didn't know what was going to happen. So, it impacted and pushed our inventory level down. If the tariffs do the same thing, you could see that. It's not the same comparison as the pandemic, though, because that was a complete, I don't know what's happening. Tariffs, same thing, you don't know what's happening, but people still are working, people still have jobs. And yes, can the tariffs affect your job? That's the bigger question to ask, right? Because then that's going to affect people being able to buy homes. Um, Here it's talking about Edmonton can expect 3% population growth in 2025, down from last year's 4.8%. And interprovincial migration is to slow from 2025 onwards. Now, is this a tariff thing or is this just a thing? Because you realize we've been going higher, higher, higher. Could we potentially just not just keep going up? Like, you have to balance out eventually at some time. Not everyone is going to move to Alberta, and not everyone's going to realize when they get here it is freezing cold. And when they come here, they're going, it might be more affordable to live here, but can I live where the air hurts my face? There are people that have moved here for affordability and realize this is not for them and have to move. Okay, so that's just the reality. So when you're looking to move to Edmonton, you have to really understand, what are you moving here for? Is it just for the home? Is that enough? Is that a big enough motivation? Yeah, so migration in Edmonton is still going to be decent, but not as red hot. Red hot just means like what you saw, 3% this year predicted versus 4.8%. I would also like to know what they predicted last year and then what actually happened. Edmonton's employment rate forecast to grow. Edmonton in 2024 had 0.6% increase in employment, pushing the city's unemployment rate to a 3-year high of 7.6%, up from 6%. The numbers are still lower than those of the pandemic in 2020, which employment saw hit nearly 12%. See, I just talked about, you have to think about employment. And now they're just talking general, right? But here, let's take a look at Trump tariffs. Trump tariffs would put Alberta in the crosshairs. Weeb says U.S. Donald Trump's threat to impose 25% increase would put Alberta in the crosshairs because of our energy portfolio. This is important to understand that Alberta is also doing their stuff as well too. This is one report about what they're predicting and seeing. While Canadians may be paying more for goods brought from the US, the tariffs may also awaken Canada to the opportunities within its borders. And I've seen a lot of people talk about just all the different partnerships across the world, right? Now, there's something to know. We live in a very global economy. It might be interesting to say, oh, I'm going to put tariffs here and tariffs there, but everything is intertwined. So there are American companies that have Canadian production. So if you stop using them, then are we stopping to provide jobs for Canadians? Because if you stop supporting them and then their numbers go down, you are sticking it to the man. But who are you sticking it to? Because your Canadian neighbor friends are working for these companies and now they don't have a job. That's going to affect the housing market. For sure it will. There are Canadian companies that use American suppliers. how's that going to work? Do you stop using the Canadian companies because they're using American suppliers? Because maybe that's the best business decision. Maybe I know some Canadian companies are going to look for other Canada opportunity, like alternatives, but then the cost is going to go up, let's say, and then they pass that cost over to you. Then the affordability is lower, and then mortgage, you can't afford as much, groceries you still have to buy, you need to eat, right? So that's something to consider as well. Um, while declining interest rates have alleviated some pressure, uncertainty surrounding the trade environment and the impact of weaker population growth are weighing on growth prospects. So there's just a lot of predictions. I don't know if you see, and this is done before the tariffs were even officially announced. In my video, I will be going through even more details of this, and we're just going to dive into all of the different things of what is happening out there because you can see all these posts, right? Like 5 days ago. Well, that doesn't account for the fact that we're now on hold because that was a day ago. How the US tariffs could impact the Canadian real estate market. That's another blog post. There's a financial post that talks about people are always going to be cautious about buying a house if they think their jobs could be in jeopardy. So that's something to take away, right? It's not, hey, are the tariffs going to affect the prices and whatnot? Well, it's that whole chain of effect, right? They're going to affect it if that's the case. So if people think their jobs are going to be at stake, then there's going to be less people buying, which then reduces the demand, which then alleviates our sellers market to potentially become more balanced. That's not necessarily a bad thing for buyers because buyers right now have so much to fight for when it comes to buying a house in Edmonton. And at the end of the day, there's only so much that we can push, push, push. Had thought we were going to have a very, very busy spring market with the tariffs. Do I think that we're going to maybe see some slowdown? I don't really know because we still, at the end of the day, are still more affordable than our neighbors in the South. So I still think we're going to have a pretty strong market. But like I said, I don't have a crystal ball, and time will tell what's going to happen. Just see this here. Thanks for all the videos. Super informative as someone from out of province hoping to move to Edmonton. You're welcome. And I hope that this is helpful to everyone who's watching, not just people looking to move. It's important to understand the facts versus the fear. And if you're interested in learning more about me going through all these articles, I'm going to go through them. I want to make sure I tackle the most recent articles and discuss with you what they're saying, what I think is actually happening, and like what some hope that you can have as a buyer and as a seller. I do believe that our market isn't just going to fall out from underneath us. That is not, I really would be surprised if that's going to happen. Of course, careful, cautious, but that's been the vibe of Alberta in general. Alberta's always been pretty cautious when it comes to buying homes. Most of our buyers don't buy at their max pre-approval amount, right? They typically are being more conservative, making sure that they have money set aside, making sure that if interest rates do go up, you should be making sure you can afford it if it does go up, not just put your head in the sand and hope that the rates just keep dropping. So there will be some more drops, I think. I don't think that it's going to increase by any means, but we shall see. So hopefully that gives you a little bit of insight this week, and we'll talk next week more about what's happening. We can see, again, it'll be a 1 week since the announcement, but don't forget, nothing's actually happened. So a lot can happen in a week because a lot just happened from last week. We didn't even know that Trump and Trudeau were going to do what they were going to do. And this is not warrant for you, by the way, to like comment in the comments about political. That's not what I'm here about. I'm here to show you the facts, here to give you information, take it for what you want and do your research and understand what it is. I know nothing can be predicted, but would you say it's better to wait to see than to rush into purchasing now? Good question. And this, like I said, is what I talked about earlier. You should never be buying based on fear. So if you're looking to invest in a property, I still think it's better to buy now than it is to wait in spring. Why? Because more buyers just come out, period, in spring. Regardless of these circumstances, more people come out because there's more choices usually available. the whole world is not going to stop. I'll tell you that. People are still going to move. There are people still moving here. And so if you're looking to purchase something, you need to talk to your realtor to understand what your specific situation is. You should never feel rushed into purchasing. But if you're like looking for a home, sometimes people can't keep waiting because you're waiting for something that doesn't exist. And one thing I have seen is people kind of wish they bought 5 years ago or 10 years ago. You can't rewind the time to go and say, "Oh, well, I'll pay that price now for this house." Well, of course you would. Anybody would. But you can't do that now. So, to answer your question, it's not about predicting what's happening. It's about, hey, if you're looking and you're currently looking to buy a house right now, I would not be putting things on hold. I'm not telling my clients, "Oh, tariffs are happening. Scary, scary. Sky is falling. Let's stop and just wait." uh, People still have jobs. Things are still moving. The economy is still going. With this is not a global shutdown, and so I think you need to really understand your motives for purchasing a home. That's really important, and that's something that your realtor can help you with. So I hope you guys have a great day, and we'll see you next week. Don't forget, it's not about the sky falling down. Have hope. Bye, guys.